Welcome to the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. I'm Sulon Carrick and I'm passionate about inspiring, motivating, supporting and informing women over 50 to embrace this exciting time of life. Health and wellness in mind, body and spirit are the foundations for living well, but there is so much more to a life well lived. Each week, through conversations with my guests, I'll be presenting topics that will help us all to live well and enjoy life. So join me as we discover new ways to become women living well after 50. Are you ready to start living? What are you waiting for? Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of the Women Living Well After 50 podcast. Now, we all know that we should be doing strength or resistance training after 50 to maintain a strong body. But sometimes that can be a little bit overwhelming and also a bit fearful, as we might think that we will injure ourselves. My guest today is Julie Cates, a muscle activation technique specialist and who works with women over 50 to help them overcome the fear of strength training to safely build strength after 50. She works with biomechanics and helps women to start taking action now with simple adjustments to how they strength train. So if you're not sure about strength training, then this is the episode for you. So let's go and join the conversation. Welcome, Julie. It's lovely to have you join me for an episode of the Women Living Well After 50 podcast.
Thank you so much, Sue. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you here as well because you're talking about a topic that is dear to my heart, and that's strength training and resistance training. And we all know that especially after 50, we do need to incorporate that workout into our program so that we can keep strong bodies and our bones will be strong. We can build muscle mass, but sometimes we're a little bit fearful of where to start. So I know you've got some great information for us today, but what I'd like you to do first is just give us a little bit about your background and who you are.
Awesome. Yeah, so I actually grew up in the States. You probably can tell by my lack of amazing accent like you have. Um, and in college, I wanted to actually become a chiropractor because I had this idea in my head that I should help people be super strong and mobile and live the life they wanted to live. And then I got really into fitness. I actually was a performer growing up. I was a dancer, and I got into group fitness because I was like, wow, I can perform and I can teach group fitness and be entertaining for people. So that really got me on my fitness track in college. But I quickly realized that the more and more that I did only cardio, the more and more that my body felt bad. It felt really tired. I was, in my early 20s and I had chronic back pain. I was like, how is this possible? I'm so healthy. I exercise all the time. Why is my back hurting me? And so it actually led me down a path of learning more about how the muscles worked. I was like, great, I'm at one of the best schools for exercise research. I can go down that path. So I actually got my degree in kinesiology and then went into muscle activation techniques, which looks at how muscles function and how they pull and don't pull on joints and how we can manipulate that. And then from there, I started learning more and more about resistance training. And that's where I really fell in love with exercise, because I realized that resistance training was really the key point of exercise that's going to lead someone to having body ownership. And when I talk about body ownership, it's really this idea of like, hey, when I want to go do something physically, I feel like I could go do that. If I want to get on the floor and be able to stand up, I could do that. If I wanted to pick up my grandkids, I could do that. Or even one of my clients who's like, I need to start exercising because I took a trip of a lifetime to Antarctica and I was worried I couldn't walk over with the group. Like I didn't have the strength to do that. And so I really got really passionate about strength training. And I realized that the biggest group of people that need to learn how to do this, mostly because they're underserved, are women 50 and over. And that's how my passion came to working with women approaching midlife and going beyond that midlife time. Like, hey, I know, fitness may have served as a calories in versus out or looking good at one point. I want you to look good. But at this point in our lives, we have to really start focusing on keeping strength and building strength. But how are we going to do that for a population that's so underserved? That's scary. What we think about the gym is usually not what we picture for ourselves. And so I've been through the years trying to figure out, okay, what are the principles that everyone should know so that this gym thing is something they feel like, yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I could do that and not get hurt. Yeah, I could do that and gain strength. So that has been my journey to now. I try to only work with women 50 and over because it's just a great group of people to be working with.
Yeah. Well, we have a bit in common, although I'm probably old enough to be your mum. I had a background where I was in dance for many years. And then when I hit 50, I started running. So that's where my cardio came in, and I would start running half marathons and marathons, but I wasn't doing the strength training. And I found that when I discovered that, I had a PT, and she got my husband and I into doing the resistance training, and I was about 55, 57 then. I found that actually helped my running because my body was stronger. So I get your point about the fact that, cardio is great, but we do need to have that strength, and you can't build strength with cardio. You've got to do that, strength training or whatever word you want to put with it. And the fact that I think that it's great that you started that earlier. In my generation, not many women were doing that sort of thing at your age. So we're coming to it a lot later, but it's not necessarily ever too late to start, is it?
It's never too late to start. And your experience is so similar to what I talk to my clients about so often. Just this morning, I asked one of my clients, she's just shy of 70. And I said, is this gym thing weird? Like, you never grew up with this gym thing, like going to the gym, lifting weights. Is it weird? And she's like, it was when I first started, but now she's been doing it since she was in her late 50s. So now she's been doing it for, almost going on 12 years. So she's like, it's not weird anymore. But it is interesting that my generation will always be like, yeah, this is normal. Like, go to the gym and lift weights. But I think, so because of this, I've brainstormed this like framework to help. And the idea is to keep your muscles healthy. We kind of have to think of it in 3 categories of move, which is cardio. A lot of people really, and especially women 50 and over, they're comfortable with cardio. I like walking. I like jogging. I like going to aerobics. That's your move category. There's the build category, which is I actually need to build the resiliency of my muscles, joints, and bones. And then the restore. So that's like when you're injured or you have a flare up, like restoring that muscle back to normal. So anytime you feed into these 3 categories of move, build, restore, you get healthier. If you go from not moving to now you move, you're going to be healthier. You're going to be on the right path. But it is important to think about the 3 categories, because if you're not filling either any of these 3 categories, there's going to be some dip somewhere. And the biggest category that, just as we've been talking about, is really a struggle for most women 50 and over is that build category. I think there's many factors in there. Number one, what we just said, it's not normal. Like, we never grew up with that. It was not normal to see gyms around, 20 years ago even. But also there's a fear of injury, because we think, oh, if I go to the gym, then I don't know, number one, that's not me. And number 2, will I get hurt because we're lifting heavy or there's more weight than just my body? And I think that's a big fear for a lot of women that keep them held back from jumping into that build my body category.
Yeah. And I think the concept, as you say, for people of your generation, going to the gym is just second nature. But for women in my demographic, you go there, you're not really sure what to do with the equipment. And that's why I always suggest that you find a professional, a personal trainer to start with, even if you don't stay, if your budget doesn't allow you to have them for too long, at least get the basics on how the technique to use and that sort of thing. And I think the other thing that women fear is if we start lifting weights, we're going to be big and bulky and we don't want to be that way, but that's not the case at all. So, so I think that there is that fear, and it's just trying to overcome that. And it's more about understanding and having the experience, going to the gym, doing the exercises, using the different equipment there, and just becoming familiar with them.
Absolutely. I think this fear thing, when we think about weight training, anytime you move your body, there's a risk and a benefit to doing it, right? Because you're going to do something in hopes that you get the benefit. But then there's always that side of like, well, what about the risk part? I really can't handle throwing my back out, or I can't handle getting my shoulder pinched. And I think that might happen if I go to the gym. When we want to exercise, it's important to pick the exercises that you feel like, hey, these have a big benefit and minimal return. Like, it drives me nuts when I go to the gym and I see people training their clients doing crazy moves that look like they're in the circus. I'm like, those people aren't trying to be in the circus. We're just trying to be healthy and strong. And so I'd like to review some of the principles that would apply to every single time you exercise. And when you apply these principles to your weight training will become immediately safer and will also become more effective, because all the health benefits from weight training come from when we challenge our muscles. And these principles will also help us challenge our muscles more effectively. I've also found you have to do way less reps. You don't have to do millions of billions of reps to get the benefits when you operate with these principles. So the first thing is being mindful of your range of motion. One thing is that when we're moving in the gym, we're going to move through a certain range of motion. Maybe you're going to reach your arm over your head and bring it back down. But when we do that, it's important that we are like, hey, how does that feel when I do that? Am I feeling symptoms? If you're feeling symptoms, that's your body telling you something. And usually it's your body telling you, saying, I'm not cool with this. We're not good today. And so it's important that when you're moving and doing weight training, you're listening all the time and responding. Like, one thing I've found is that we all know, like, oh, I should listen to my body. But then the question is like, what do I do about that? And when it comes to the gym, what to do about it usually translates into just don't do it. Like, just don't do it at all. And that is a huge risk for women, because when we don't do an exercise, we leave that entire motion weak and vulnerable for injury when you go and do it in your regular life. Like when you lift your grandkid up high, or when you reach up at the grocery store to grab something. Now that range that you decided to not strengthen at the gym is now vulnerable because it's weaker. So what you need to do is feel out the range. So just do the motion with no weight. Just do the motion to see how a joint is feeling. And then if you feel any symptoms, you just leave that portion out. So sometimes when I'm working with my clients, that might mean we're only doing a tiny motion at the bottom, but that's where their body said it was okay. And what we find is that when you exercise and strengthen and challenge the areas and ranges only that feel okay, then your body usually gives you more. So what happens is, let's say you're doing squats. I think a lot of people are familiar. Maybe they've never done squats, but they have some picture of a squat in their head. And you do it and you're like, wow, it feels great for the first half. And then the bottom half feels like it hurts my knees. Great. Do the top half. Keep doing the top half, even though it doesn't look like what the group fitness instructor is saying, even though it doesn't look like what Julie's doing or what Sue's doing. Do what the thing is right for your body, because you're the only one that can sense it. And what happens more often than not is, if your body is ready, it will give you more range. And sometimes very quickly, meaning maybe set number 2, you're like, wow, I've got 20 more degrees that I can go down. So that's the first one. Be mindful of your range and listen and respond. But don't listen and leave it out, because that leads to people systemically getting weaker and weaker. For example, a lot of people are like scared to do spine extensions. They don't want to hurt their back. And I get that. But the thing is, if we always just leave out that one, anytime your real life asks you to do that, or you have to do that, that motion is now really weak. So the important thing is do it, but be mindful of the motion and listen to your body as you do it, and just do the range that feels good. So that's my first principle, is respect your range of motion, and it has to be individualized. So you're having to feel it out as you go.
And it's okay to do that because, as you say, if you've only got a small range, just do to that. But you may find that after regularly working out, your range of motion will increase. But if you're trying to push it, that's when you can injure yourself. So that's
Yeah.
a good theory. And you know, if you have, say, a personal trainer, they will be able to help you with alternates or things to help you, so that, you know, you're not going to injure yourself, but as you say, you're still working that range of motion for daily life.
Yes, absolutely. The second thing that should always apply when you resistance train is your speed. It should always be really, really slow. And this one actually feeds into the first one of range of motion, because the slower you go, the more you will realize where your body starts talking to you. And your body usually doesn't talk to you unless something's wrong. Like usually we wake up and we feel good when there's nothing signaling to us that something's bad. There's no tightness, there's no zinging, there's no pain, there's no funkiness in our hips. So when we move slow, it actually is two things. It keeps us really safe because it allows us to feel out our motion. Like when we're doing our squat, if we're going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, we never really feel, when did that symptom pop up? And oh darn, now we have, our knees are bothering us for the next 2 days. But if you move slow, you're going to notice right when something may occur, if something does occur. And you're also going to be challenging your muscle more. So as I said in the beginning, all the health benefits from resistance training come from when you squeeze your muscles. And so the more that we can highlight the muscle squeeze without doing thousands of millions and billions of reps, the more benefit we're going to get in a shorter amount of time. So speed is a huge component. And people will notice right away when they move slow, they're like, wow, this is way harder. But in a good way. It's harder for the challenge, not for any type of pain.
But I also think when you go slowly, as you say, you know, it's that mind-body connection. So it gives you time to think. Now, if you go to a trainer or a class, they will give you the cues of what you need to think about when you're doing a particular exercise to do it technically correct. So if you're just trying to race the clock or think I can get 500 squats out in, you know, 2 minutes, I'm fantastic, that's not really doing you any good, because you are probably not doing them correctly. So as you say, the slow version gives you time to actually think about what you're doing, how am I doing it, and then, as you say, feeling when your body is talking to you.
Absolutely. And that mind-body connection is the next point, where when you are strength training, thinking about the muscle squeeze, like actually trying to like take your brain and be like, do I feel that muscle right there? And can I contract it? Because a lot of times when we exercise, we do everything except think about our body. We think about what music is on. We think about what's up on the news, up on the TV. We think about how many reps we got. We think about counting. We think about trying not to think about it because it's uncomfortable, because the muscles are being challenged. So the more that we actually are thinking, squeeze my glutes, squeeze my butt cheeks as I do my squat, the more we're going to get that stimulus. And so that's why all three of these feed in together, is monitoring your range motion and respecting what you have, even if it's different than the person next to you or the instructor. Moving slowly so that any cues that your body needs to give you gets the chance to give you, and for you to respond and to adjust accordingly. And then squeezing the muscles. Really think about contracting, rather than when you do bicep curls, you're not like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're thinking contract, contract, contract. Can I develop connection? Because that piece also really helps with things like balance and coordination, because you're developing ownership over feeling and sensing this muscle tissue that you're working in the gym.
Mm, mm. I like the use of the term ownership because, that brings a bit of responsibility to you as well, and to get the most out of your workout. So they're three really good points, for people to remember. Now, with the starting to take action, what could someone do if they haven't done any training or any strength training? What's your advice on how to start and what to do and what to expect?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always like to go back and think about the three buckets of like, how can I improve the health of my muscles? I can move, I can build, I can restore. So if there's one that you are excited about and you're like, I do nothing and I could start walking, then great, I'm going to start walking. I will say walking is not enough stimulus for most people to see benefit because most people already walk. They already are
Mm,
moving and walking.
mm,
So if you are interested in jumping into the build category, like you said, it's really great to find a trainer that you can get advice from. I also have a free women's program. It's 3 workouts. That's a great way to get started, just to get some things under your belt where you feel like, okay, I know 20 exercises now that I could do. But in the end, feeling like, hey, I need to develop a routine that I can do regularly so that it actually does build my body. I think that's another issue I see a lot with women is that when they do strength train, they're not doing it enough to actually
mm,
see changes. Like, for example, I was just doing some looking up of research of like how frequently do people need to exercise to like negate bone density loss, bone mineral loss, that leads to osteoporosis.
mm,
I thought, wow, if women knew they had to do it 3 or more times a week, maybe they would, feel like, oh, well, that's the minimum. That's what I did too. But back to your question, I feel like getting some kind of guidance on how to do this safely, because exercise is not good if you only do it once. You got to figure out it's not about getting the home runs every time. Oh, I did it perfect. I did the most amazing workout. It's about doing something that's repeatable and something that you
mm,
can start with. So if weight training means, working with someone like you or someone like me just to get the ball rolling, then great. But I do feel like most women know what they would do, but it's figuring out how to break down that like personal belief to figure out like, will I allow myself to do that?
mm, mm, mm. And there is a lot of information on the internet, of course, but you just always have to be aware that you just can't say, "Oh, I'm going to start today," and then go and try and lift something that's just way too heavy, and that's where you're going to have your problems. And you can get some ideas from the internet. There's online programs, and I'm sure you have. That sort of facility as well. So I think that it's important just to make a start, though, because as you were saying, the research shows that we need to be doing that strength training because
Yes.
that's really the basis to me of everything. Once you do have your strength, then you can do other activities as well. It leads into being stronger to do those things.
Absolutely. And I think a couple things to keep women from getting started, is that thing like, well, if I get started, then will I be super buff? No, you won't unless you decide to strength train 7 days a week, really, really hard and drink a lot of protein and get that much stimulus. But it's actually, I think a lot of people also are scared about the side effect of being sore and achy after they work out
Mm,
and the
mm.
nervousness around the heaviness of the weights. A couple
Yes.
things. If you follow the principles that I talked about, range of motion, speed, and squeezing your muscles, if a weight is too heavy, your body just won't do it. So most people, if they grab a too heavy of a weight, they think, oh, I'll just get it up. They probably went too fast. They probably didn't respect their range of motion and they didn't think about squeezing their muscles. So I always reassure my clients about that whenever we're increasing weight, because you do have to do challenging things to create change in your body. You can't do easy stuff and think your body's going to adapt to that. You have to challenge your body. But when you
Mm,
follow
mm,
these principles, that makes the challenge safer and safe so that you're not, because if your body can't do it within those 3 parameters, you just won't move anywhere. You won't be able to move it without thrusting it or using momentum. And that's where the
Mm,
soreness comes in. The second thing is that there's a big misconception out there that to create change in your body from the gym, you have to get sore. And that could not be further from the truth. Soreness is actually a sign of inflammation in your body. And that means you'll need to recover, meaning take a day or two off. But it's actually the process of getting to the challenge. And then most people just blow through the challenge because we're told no, no pain, no gain, push through it, move it faster, get the reps done. But when we're respecting our body, you're way less likely to get sore because whenever something becomes too challenging, your body will just stop doing it. You'll break the
mm,
form. You'll have to go too fast. You'll have to start disrespecting your range of motion. So going back to those three principles, those are things that'll really help you minimize. I like to call that like micro injury is what soreness is, like mini injuries to your body.
mm,
You don't actually
mm,
have to experience that to get the benefits of weight training.
mm. Yeah, that's a good point because, the no pain, no gain has always been around. But I just think for also that, as you said, I think it's a matter of making it building on a foundation. So you're not going, if you're starting out, you're not going to be at a certain level. You're going to be at a base level, and you need to know what that level is, though, don't you? Because then from there you can build, because you might have more strength than what you think, and then if you're not challenging yourself, well, then you're not really going to improve. But also equally, if you haven't done any exercise, you're coming from a level very low base, you need to take it a little bit slower, a little bit easier, and maybe start with just body weight and then go into lighter weights and gradually building the weight up.
Absolutely. One of my mentors, he calls it, we actually want to think about doing it micro progression, meaning like if you think you're ready for the next step, do half a step, because
Mm,
we get a lot of days to exercise, meaning just this week, we get 7 opportunities to exercise. So if you're thinking, yeah, I'm going to start strength training. I think I know how to do squats and I think I know how to do push-ups. I'm going to follow the range of motion, speed, squeezing the muscles, and maybe I'll do 3 of each one. And if I feel great the next day, cool, I can try 4 or I could try 5. But I think a lot of times what's presented to us is, hey, you've never done it before. Great. Let's try this hour-long workout where we're going to do 20 different exercises. And it really deters a lot of people from exercising. I think that's probably why the mainstream fitness industry doesn't serve most people. And we know that because most people don't exercise because their flavor doesn't exist out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, how often would you recommend that we do the strength training? We've been talking about osteoporosis, which is an important factor, especially as we age, plus also the range of motion. We still want to be able to do things in our functional fitness needs to be there to just live our daily lives. I mean, some people say they can't do a squat, but you still need to sit and stand, don't you? And things like that. So you've got to be able to keep those basic fundamental movements so that you can stay independent in your living and do all the things that
Absolutely.
you talked about at the beginning.
Right, absolutely. So I always recommend to my ladies 3 to 4 times a week, challenging your body with the build aspect of resistance training. Now, that doesn't mean 3 to 4 hours a week, but a lot of my clients will do a few hours with me, but then at home, 20 to 30 minute, just slow, focused strengthening that they can just do, at their house, but it has to be frequently. Because one thing I think that's often missed is that, if I do one workout a week with my trainer, then that'll be enough. But
Mm,
really, our bodies respond to the environment that it's in. So if we're in a really low key environment where we're lounging all day and then once a week we go and work out, it's usually not going to be enough stimulus to create change in our body. That's like having like a salad once a week and be like, I got nutrients, yay. And then you eat, crappy food the rest of the week.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so we want the regularity of stimulus to show our environment, hey, we've got this muscle and we're using it, so don't lose it. Or we're using it, so build it. So there has to be that repeatability. So I always say, aim for 4 Because then if your child gets sick or your pet needs to go to the vet, you're still covered for 3.
Yeah. And I think really we've got to look at it. I think for me, you've got to look at it in a different way. I think you've got to look to it not just as working out or exercise or a chore. It's got to be part of your lifestyle. You have to accept that if you want to be healthy and strong as you age and be independent in your living, it has to, some sort of movement and strength needs to be part of your lifestyle,
Right.
just like brushing your teeth or eating or whatever you do regularly. It needs to be looked at as just something else that you do in life, not something that, oh, I have to do that or I should do that. It should just be, well, I'm getting up and this is what I do. I mean, some people get up and they go for a walks as soon as they get up in the morning, or other people might get up and work out, but all of that should just be part of your daily living.
Absolutely. Almost like it's part of you. Like what you said, brushing your teeth. I always like to tell my clients too that sometimes when I say, "Oh, it's a lifestyle," people think, "Oh, well, it's going to take over my life." Well, I don't want my
Yeah.
life to be fitness. That's not me. But it's also I sometimes when I say it this way to people, they like it because it's like it's for your lifestyle. Like,
Mm.
why do you work? Because you love your work. Some people do, but mostly so they can have an income so they can live the life they want, supply for their family, travel and have enriching, experiences. But that's what exercise does in for your body. It's like saying, hey, I got to keep this thing working well so that I can go and do the things I want to do and think of it that way. But I love what you brought up where it's like I wake up and it's part of your lifestyle and you and I we're passionate about it. So we'll do it, but it can also just be in your lifestyle without it taking over your life. Like I think
Oh, yeah.
sometimes my clients are like, oh, well, I'm not like a gym rat. That's not me. Like you don't have to be a gym rat, but you do have to do enough that it keeps your body functioning. Um,
Mm.
because there does become an age where, I work with so many clients, right around 50 and they're still feeling great, we're moving great. And then eventually, usually right past the 60 mark, they're like, I feel like I'm kind of losing some function. And that's when they
Mm.
get more into the strength training, probably because they're already into it a little bit with me. But really that strength training is the thing that keeps the strength, keeps the function, keeps the mobility.
Mm.
And it's like you're just regularly practicing. It's like, hey, every week I practice sitting in a chair and standing up, but like with some more resistance. And every week I practice reaching up and I strengthen those motions that I want to keep.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's the way you look at it, the psychological way. It's part of life. And, if you look at your life as as being a pie, it's just a slice of pie out of every day. You've got all different things that you do every day, and just staying healthy by movement and including the strength training. That's just part of the pie. That's just part of every day. And you will find that you get into a good habit and you will feel the benefit if you stick to it. After a month, you're going to start feeling stronger and you're going to should feel so much better and you want to keep doing it. So that helps to motivate you. Now, we are getting on in the interview, but I just did want to talk about the recovery. We talked about the move and we talked about the build and now the recovery, because there's some people that think, oh, I've got to do this every day and my body is really tired today. I don't feel like doing it, but I've got to do it. What's the importance of the recovery?
The first thing is making sure you're not working out in a way that you need extensive recovery. Like Charles, my husband and I, we run our business together, and he used to be an athlete, which meant he would work out like crazy. And then he would spend hours a week trying to recover from his exercise. That means he was doing so much damage to his body that he had to recover so much from it. But here we are trying to exercise for health. So the more that when we are in the exercise, that we structure it so that we don't need that much recovery from it. That's the first step. First line of defense is prevention from recovery, which will
Mm.
save you time too, save you tons of time. But if your body's not feeling ready to exercise, then my recommendation is always to do what we call the 50% rule. So oftentimes muscles, when lightly stimulated, will recover faster than just resting. So if you really do feel like you need a recovery day, then going and doing your exercise at a light amount. Maybe it's a day that you do a walk. Maybe one of the most powerful things that I gave one of my 85-year-old clients is when you're feeling off, I want you to go to the gym instead of skipping it. Go to the gym and do half of everything you were going to do, half the weight, half the reps, because that light muscle stimulation actually helps them heal faster or recover faster and get that range of motion back faster. So I always tell my clients, I can't force you to do what you want to do. But if you were going to choose between just resting on your couch and, watching TV versus doing something light, then I would recommend doing something light because your body will benefit faster from it and you will be able to get back to building your health with this exercise. Because remember, we do have to have that regularity of stimulus. So the more that, number one, we don't create injury that we have to recover from, the better. And number two, when we are feeling low, or even when you have like a systemic thing, like you're ill or you're feeling a little off or you're sore physically from a workout, going and doing something light is always going to help the muscles build faster. But you never want to feel like in your workout, you're systemically going downhill. Some signs of that is like if you start feeling lightheaded or dizzy or headachy, those are signs that just overall your system is too fatigued. And that would be a good sign to rest. But if it's just muscular, usually doing that light stimulus will help the recovery way faster than you might think. And sometimes it takes the soreness right away because muscles thrive on contraction.
Yeah, and I've experienced that myself. But also, I think it's good for your mental well-being as well. You may not feel like it, and your body is feeling low, but if you go and just do a workout or do some movement, it's amazing how mentally you feel better as well. You've lifted in your mood, and your body's feeling good. And as you say, sometimes I've found myself in the past, if I've had that delayed onset muscle soreness that we can get, and you work through it, once you start moving, your muscles do start to loosen up, and you start feeling better. So that's a good way of looking at recovery, because a lot of people go, oh, I'm having a recovery day today, and that might be that they're not doing anything. But as you say, we're built to move. I mean, if we didn't have all the modern conveniences to do our housework for us and everything else, and we just ring up and have our groceries delivered and things like that. I mean, way back, they didn't have any of those, and the women were probably quite fit and strong just doing their daily chores.
Absolutely. It's funny you bring that up. I'll keep this brief, but I was talking to one of my clients about this, that as we get older, we naturally get weaker. Everyone gets weaker. There's a point in our life where we all get stronger. For example, I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at home, and they're getting stronger every day, and they don't have to try. But my husband and I, we're at the cusp of, we're going to start getting weaker every day. Because after the age of 35, you just start slowly getting weaker. We have to really try hard to stay strong. But also, I was comparing with my client. She's in her mid-60s. Said, I woke up and for 2 hours, I lugged around a 20-pound baby on my hip while I'm fixing breakfast. And she's in the part of her life where she wakes up and relaxes and has tea with her husband. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there are huge physical demand differences that have happened there, where I was challenging my body. So as we age, it's just important too to acknowledge, like, hey, I'm getting older, so my body doesn't want to keep this strength. And my lifestyle is more relaxed for a lot of people. So the physical demands of my day might not be there. I might not be doing 20 loads of laundry because I don't have kids at home anymore. Or I might not be, whipping up big meals where I'm carrying pots here and there. And, it's just a more relaxed lifestyle, which also means the environment, the stress on our bodies is less. And so our bodies will adapt to that. And so that's why it can kind of go quickly, because our bodies are genetically losing strength, but then the lifestyle is also less demanding. So that's going to feed into loss of strength too. So that's why I'm always like, everyone needs to strength train. You need to strength train.
Yeah, and look, it has become more of a mantra over the last, I'd say, 5 years. It's, before that it wasn't quite as out there, but now I think with research and everything, we realize that if we want to be independent when we get older, we have to be able to have the bodies that will be strong enough for us to do that. And I mean, I'm 66 and I have a couple of grandsons, and they're very active, and they expect me to be doing exactly what they're doing, and I try to keep up as well with them because but that's the reason. Or we go traveling and we want to be able to walk around and see all the sights without saying, oh well, I'll just stay at the hotel because I can't, I don't have that physical strength to be able to do all those sort of things, or even lifting our suitcases and that sort of thing. So Julie, before we go today, firstly, I'm going to ask you a question, which is, what does being a woman living well mean to you? But also, is there anything else that you'd like to chat about before you answer that question?
No, I think we covered a
We
lot of
covered,
things. Yeah.
yeah, just the
It's
3 points again was
yes.
move,
Yeah, so the 3 buckets are going to be move,
buckets,
build, and restore.
yeah,
That's how to keep your muscles healthy, those 3 categories. And then the 3 principles to keep in mind when you strength train is going to be being mindful of your range of motion, keeping your speed slow so that you have time to adjust, and then focus on connecting and squeezing with your muscles.
excellent.
And then
Okay, so now to my question. What does being a woman living well mean to you? I won't say after 50 because you're not there yet.
I'm not quite there yet. I think a woman living well at before or after 50 is, it's funny, in our podcast we talk about what does health mean, and I'm always prepared for that question, but I'm going to morph it because it applies to, this is how I view living well, but is creating your lifestyle so that you have bufferage wherever you go. And what that means is that you have the ability to sway side to side without complete compromise of your mental health or your physical health. So I developed this idea because at one point I thought that I was really, really weak and mentally really weak physically. And I felt like any little pin drop would set me off. Like, oh, I'd be, physically unable to move well for a while because I overdid a workout, or I had a stressful thing and then I'd be mentally shut down. But building in the systems and practices so that you're more mentally resilient to things that are stressful to you. You're more physically resilient to things that are stressful to you. And any category that you find to be, something that keeps you healthy, spiritually resilient, so that you're able to stick to your path of what is bringing you life, without being steered off course. Because I think our lives have, all these things that can influence us, but making sure that we're staying true to ourselves and staying true to the mission that we are on each in our lives.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great answer. So thank you very much for joining me today, Julie, and I will be putting all your links into the show notes so that our listeners can contact you.
Awesome.
It's been great to talk about how we can safely build our strength after 50, and you do have a process called Exercise for Life, and I think that's what we've been talking about, that if you want to enjoy living and living independently as you age, you need to be doing those exercises, including the strength training, to keep you strong and active.
Yes.
So thanks. Go.
And quickly, I just wanted to offer, if anyone would like to try, I just developed a brand new free program for women 50 and over. It's for home and it's for beginners. So you don't need any equipment. I think I use just a chair and maybe some light dumbbells, but you can always grab, something from the pantry. But if you'd like, any of your listeners would like to try that, they can sign up at www.exerciseforlifestudios.com/women. And it's free.
Okay.
It's just a great place to start.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And I'll put that link in the show notes as well.
Awesome.
So
Great.
it's been a pleasure to meet you, Julie. And I know you have a podcast as well. So I'll be directing the ladies over to take a listen to that also.
Awesome. And I noticed you were recording this. Could you send me that recording? Because I'll obviously be promoting this episode on our platforms and sharing it with our following as well.
Yes, certainly. No problem
Great.
at all.
All
Anyway,
right.
lovely to meet you. You have
Thank
a
you.
lovely afternoon or evening wherever it is where you are. It's morning here for me.
Yes.
So the time zones can play a little bit with our head, but never mind. Anyway,
Yeah.
thanks again, Julie, and take care.
Take care. Thank you so much, Sue.
Well, it was great to talk to Julie today about how we can safely build strength after 50, and another person talking about the importance of strength training. I've had other guests on the show who also talk about that, so there must be something in it, I think. So if you've enjoyed the episode today, I'd love you to give me a like or leave a comment. Do you do strength training? I'd love to hear about what you do. Also share it with a friend because I know that it will be of value to them. That's it for this episode, but until next time, remember to live well, enjoy life, and most of all, be a woman living life your way. Bye for now.